Welcome to this week's episode of Bear Down Ballers. Again, I'm your host, AJ BRAMLETT, back with my super producer, Ryan Wall. And man, we're keeping on rolling, man. We had some good games last week. What were your thoughts on the Oregon and Oregon State game, my man?
Well, AJ, there's only one way to start this, and it's about the guy that we talk about every week, and he continues to dominate and elevate the level that he's playing at. And that's Jules Tabellas. He scored 40 points against Oregon last Thursday, the first Wildcat to score 40 since 1995 when Damon Stoudemire scored 40, and he was only 6 points away from tying Ernie McRae's Wildcat record of 46. Was only 2 points away from breaking the record at McKale Center. But yeah, Tabellas was excellent in this game. He also added 9 rebounds. This was on 16 for 21 shooting. It just seems like it was coming so easy to him. Scored 27 of the 40 in the first half. Looked like he was still on track to break the record, but I thought this was easily his best performance as a Wildcat and one of the best performances by an Arizona player in a lot of years. What do you think about this performance and, the historical element to this?
Yeah, I mean, it was just incredible, man. The way that he did it so efficiently, I think. And the greatest thing about it was he had all his family here, right, from Lithuania, and I think probably that had a lot to do with it. As he said that his mom hadn't seen him, in like 2 years. So like to have his family and his friends there supporting him, and for him to have a performance like that on the national stage was just incredible. And he didn't dribble very often. You know what I mean? He just kind of caught the ball doing the same things he's done all year. His guys, everyone else did a great job of finding him in places where he could be effective and score. And he just made it look easy, man. It was just a pleasure to watch. And, I was getting nervous there at the end because, we had just had on, Big Ernie McRae, the last week on the show. And then the record was at jeopardy, that same night, which was pretty cool. So, Zoo has just been doing this all year long. We've already said it, but the efficiency and the ease with which he did that is incredible. Scoring 40 points is not easy in college basketball. And for him he could have had more. He definitely could have had more, but he played the game the right way the rest of the time. It wasn't like he was forcing it and trying to go for the record. I don't think he even knew, that he was close to it, but he just played a hell of a game of basketball, and it was just really fun to watch.
Yeah. So this 40-point performance from Tabellas was the 6th most ever for a Wildcat in a game. But AJ, if you had to put in perspective and kind of, rank or put together a list of the best games you've seen and in the Wildcat history, where would you kind of rank this performance there?
I did see the one, when Damon scored, I think 41, right, or 40 in McHale, and that was pretty electric. But the exciting thing about and exceptional thing about Zoo is he did it with no 3-pointers. You know what I mean? Those are all twos and free throws, which is incredible. And I'd put it up there with any of the greatest performances, in McHale Center and for Wildcats in general, because you don't see a guy really with that skill set. We haven't had really a guy like that does it the way that he does it, and with the ease in which he scores the basketball. And those mid-range shots are not easy. Guys that are hoopers know those shots are kind of the toughest shots in basketball, which are those 5 to 8 to 9 foot shots. He's automatic on those this year, and he knows exactly where he needs to be. He's so quick off the ground with his shot, gets his shot off quick. And I was thinking about who he reminded me of that I played against, and the guy that he kind of reminds me of is Anton Jamison. That used to play for North Carolina, played in the NBA for a long time. Just in the fact that the time that he catches the ball to when he shoots it is so quick, and he can put such good touch on it by doing that. That's not something that normal players could do. So, Zoo's performance, last week was up there with any of the greatest ones that we've seen. Anyone having a Wildcat uniform, and it's great that it happened in front of his family and friends.
Yes, a player that Tommy has compared him to, or he didn't compare him to, but he made a comment, somebody asked him about last week, was Domantas Sabonis, as we know from the Kings, another guy Tommy coached, a left-handed Lithuanian similar to Jules Tabellas. Do you kind of see any similarities between the two?
Yeah, I can totally see that. That's a good comparison. They play similar styles. I think Zoo will have to improve his 3-point shot, which he will. I mean, I don't know if, DeMonte shot it as well as he does, now when he was in college. But absolutely, I mean, the size, the mobility, they're both really good passers, high level passers, run the court. So there's a lot of similarities there. And that's a guy that, Zoo can look to as a blueprint to what his NBA career could look like.
Yeah, something else that kind of came to my mind when during this game, but just kind of throughout the season, we've always been talking, and we continue to talk about, the progression of Tabellus and how he's gotten better. But I wanted to ask you kind of like when you've been around basketball, you played at a high level for many years. Like, when have you seen at the college level someone from, their sophomore to junior year kind of have this, just elevated level? He went from averaging 14 and 6 to averaging 21 and 9, almost 10, almost a double every night, which it seems like he almost does have. When have you seen this before? And what do you think this says about, Tabellus as a player, Tommy Lloyd as a coach, and this program as a whole?
Well, I think that, Zoo has always had this in him, you know what I mean? And, obviously his role changed from last year to this year. We had a lot of guys last year with Ben and DT and CeeLo and, everybody else. I mean, we had a lot of guys that could do it. So his role wasn't exactly the same as it is this year. But the thing that he did over the summer, and we've talked about this already, is that he improved in so many areas of the game. I mean, he's improved his free throw shooting, which has helped his scoring average, obviously. He's improved his toughness. He's gotten stronger. He's more physical this year. So he's done everything that he's needed to do to make that kind of jump. And now he's kind of in the perfect position where we're running the offense through him. He's beating everybody down the court every single time for layups, even more than he was last year. He's more comfortable in the system, which is second year with Tommy, and Tommy has full faith in him and trust in him. I mean, he really hasn't had a bad game this year. I mean, I guess Oregon maybe like he had, which we would say was a subpar game for him, on the season that he's had, but he's been consistent, every single game this year. And that's something that we always wanted from him. And he's been delivering it, every game this year. So, he's just a hell of a player. We're lucky to have him. His personality and the way that he works every single day with just a business-like attitude is something that, is an example for the younger guys that are there this year. And, he's just one of the best players in the nation, if not the best.
Yeah, I think, we start to see, we've been on this since the beginning of the season, but other people nationally are starting to kind of recognize Tabellus a little bit more in that National Player of the Year category, because he rightfully deserves it. But this leads me to my next thought, AJ. Do you think that, having these performances, these star-like performances, 40 points, dropping multiple 20-point double-doubles, things like that, do you think that's, going to raise his draft stock to where he could be, a late first-round pick, early second-round pick? And, do you think this, the progression he's on, that, by the end of the season, similar to DT, and Koloko last year, that he'll be gone and eventually go to the NBA draft this season?
I mean, obviously, if he keeps playing the way that he's playing, I mean, people are taking notice, and NBA scouts. He's already been on, NBA scouts boards already. So, I think they wanted to see, more of what he's been providing this year with the toughness and, the more consistent play, which he's provided. I think they probably still want to see him shoot, a little bit more from the outside, but that doesn't mean that he can't. He's a good shooter. He just doesn't do it in our system. So, I think that once the season is done, he's going to continue to play well. Obviously, he'll probably test the waters, which would be the smart thing for him to do. And then if he shoots the ball well, anything can happen for him, because, I mean, he's proven it that he's played against top competition, in college basketball. He's dominated at times this year, but he's competed and played, good basketball in every single one of the primetime matchups that we've had this year. And so he's definitely on the big board, you know what I mean? And so, there's things that he'll have to improve on, continue to improve on with shooting and things like that. But overall, I mean, he's definitely a first round prospect right now. And, if he's playing hot basketball at the end of the year and plays well and workouts and things, the sky's the limit for Zoo, because he has all the intangibles that you need to be a successful NBA player.
Yeah, I totally agree there, AJ. Arizona won by 15 points in this game, and Tabellus wasn't incredible, but it was kind of, the rest of the team, did have a good performance. The team overall shot 53% from the field, 43% from deep, and, three other guys were in double digits. Umar Ballo had a double-double, 10 points, 11 rebounds. Kerr Kriisa was 4 for 8 from deep, 13.7 assists. And, Cedric Henderson, 10 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, and Pella had 9 off the bench. Which one of those guys kind of stuck out for you in this game?
I think everybody played well, but I'm going to go with Kerr on this one, just because his shooting and the type of shots that he took in that game. They were big shots, you know what I mean? He made them when we needed them, and just the way, the pace that he played with in the game, the way he facilitated, the way he got Zoo the ball in spots where he needed to score, and then just when he shoots the ball well like that, we're a different team. And I think I got to give Pella credit too for playing a really solid game. Great defense as well. On the guys from Oregon all game long, he was very aggressive. And so, Umar played Umar basketball. He did his thing, needed to do it. Said always, if we can get double digits from Said too, he's another guy that usually when he's shooting the ball well and playing well, we're going to win by a good margin. And so, everybody was ready for that game. It was just, I was happy to see the fight and the grit, that we needed to get them back, and we did it, and did it handily. So, that's what I wanted to see, and that's what we delivered. So I was really happy with that performance.
Yeah, well, moving on, later in the weekend, Arizona had a 32-point victory in McAllen against Oregon State. Their 6th straight victory on the year puts Arizona at 21-3 on the season. Just a half game back to UCLA at 10-3 in the Pac-12. But this game was kind of a different game and kind of a throwback to the beginning of the season. Arizona played 11. Tommy had 11 guys play at least 5 minutes in this game. So a lot of people got some run. Only 3 players finished the game in double digits. Obviously, Tabellus, once again, leading the team in scoring 19 and 8 in only 23 minutes. The starters only played a little over 20 minutes apiece. But the one guy I wanted to start with is a guy that hasn't played meaningful minutes in a pretty long period of time now, and that's Adama Ball. Yes, he played 10 minutes. He had 8 points, 2 rebounds, and assists. Made 2 threes. I thought he was just incredible in this game from the time he stepped foot on the floor. And AJ, I really do believe that this guy can be a real contributor down the stretch for this team. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've talked about it, all season long, really, but especially the past few weeks that, when he wasn't getting playing time and, he had to probably tighten up some things that Tommy wanted to do, that he wasn't a forgotten man on this team. And he's somebody that really provides, a lot because of his scoring, his ability to hit big shots, big threes. He's long on defense, so he can be a disruptor there. And it was just good to see him come out confident right away. He hit 2 out of his 3 threes, threw a nice lob pass to Henry for the dunk, and just looked comfortable out there, which is what we wanted to see from him. And so if he can build on that, it's a good performance for him to build on. And we're going to need him. As we've said, if we're going to make a deep run into the tournament, there's going to be scenarios that happen where there's either foul trouble or a matchup is wrong or whatever, where he's going to be able to help us. And, he proved it last year in the Pac-12 tournament, hit those big threes against UCLA when he came in, his first year. And now I think he's just learning, getting more comfortable, kind of figuring out his role. And now, that's a good performance for him to springboard on, for the rest of the Pac-12 season, because we're definitely going to need him once we get to the NCAA tournament. So I was just happy for him to see him have some success out there after going through the ups and downs and not playing so much the past month and a half or so.
Yeah, I was really excited to see him there too. He's another guy. He's 6'7". He's traditionally a guard, but he can guard many different positions on defense. So yeah, I think a guy like that, if he gets going, he could be a real X factor off the bench for this team. Another guy that really stood out to me, he only played 7 minutes. That's Philip Bervician. He hasn't played a lot this season, but he had 4 points and assists in 7 minutes. And I just thought it was like the best. He was moving up and down the floor. I thought he had a really good performance on defense. And he just looked, he looked much improved from the beginning of the season when we saw him last. What'd you think about him?
Yeah, I know. I'm Philip, and I talked about this at the beginning of the season. Like, he's super talented. I mean, his job, his game just needed to adjust to the American college level. Really, get skill work in, which I think our staff does a hell of a job with. So, he, even though you haven't seen him playing, that he's going through the skill work every day. Obviously, he's practicing, hard against these guys, and so you're starting to see that just maturity come for him. And he's a big dude too, man. He's a big guard, and so he'll continue to improve. But it was also good to see him have some success, because when you're going through, especially as a freshman, and when it's new to you, like, you practice well. Even if you're practicing well, if you don't have a little bit of success in the games, you don't feel like that progress has been made. So when you get in, and even though it may have not been a lot of minutes, just to get a couple buckets and play well, have some assists, and play smooth out there on the court is a big thing for him. So it's also a thing that he can build upon, because he's a big key to the future of this program, and he's got a lot of talent that we're just barely scratching the surface of. So it was good to see him play well as well.
AJ, I wanted to ask you, if it was up to you and you had the choice to kind of make the rotation yourself, who would you bring off the bench? The 5 starters have been the same all year. I mean, obviously, besides the recent change, but who would you bring off the bench?
Yeah, no, I think the rotation right now has been working great. I mean, I think being in the starting lineup gives him a little bit more ownership and opportunity, because we need him. He's a spark plug for us, especially on the defensive end, and when he's a disruptor. And then when he can knock down his threes and get hot early, he's a difference maker for us. And then Pella seems comfortable in this role, so that he's doing well. Kylan continues to just improve and get better every game. I think it doesn't always show in the box score with his stats, but if you watch the game, you see the kind of basketball that he's playing. He's confident, he's tough, for a 17-year-old, like we always say. And then the guy that is Adama. I think that Adama could be a guy, if we could work him in a little bit more into the rotation, like, he could be a difference maker. And I think Henry and Dylan, they'll be ready for their spot minutes when they need to be. I mean, I think they've proven that. In certain situations, in certain matchups, we're going to need them too. But I think Adama is the one that needs to consistently, we need a little bit more from him moving down for the rest of the season. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I think, Pella and Boswell are pretty steady in their roles there. They're the best 2 guys off the bench. But like I said, I think Adama should have a real role every single night. And then if anyone gets in foul trouble, I think that's when you mix in, either a Henry or a Dylan Anderson, whoever you really want to at that time. Tommy said recently that they're basically about even. Like, he doesn't really, have one ahead of the other. They're just both there. But also, I just want to talk about them a little bit more, and just like the kind of the growth and kind of just the timeline of the big men at Arizona the past couple of years. Because we know when Umar came in, first year was a backup, and now, he's a starter. It was similar to Koloko. He was a starter, but he was a role player at times. But then, he really transformed into a really big piece of this team last season. And then, Tabellis, as we know. And then do you think that, this is kind of the path that Tommy's going to have his big men on, and now with, as we've been talking about with Dylan and Henry coming up next?
Yeah, I mean, he's proven it so far in these 2 years that he's been able to, and just have guys improve leaps and bounds at the big position. And CeeLo got so much better, what I mean, and Sean had something to do with that. But CeeLo improved like crazy last year into nobody, I thought, before that season last year, thought that he was going to be that high a pick in the second round and have the career that he's having so far this year. He's been playing great basketball in the NBA. And then Umar has come, just leaps and bounds and improved. I don't think anybody saw him, being one of the best bigs in the country from last year to this year. So obviously what they're doing is working. The good thing is that these guys have examples in front of them that they can look at, who are pushing them every day, who are teaching them the ins and outs of the games, the tricks and trades of being a successful big guy in this program. And so I think it'll just keep going, because then those guys will have their turn. Same thing as when I was there that I talk about all the time with Ben Davis and Joseph Blair, taught myself and Ben Davison, and then we pass that on to the next guys. And so, that's just the way that it's worked in this program. And Tommy's done a hell of a job with these guys, and he likes playing bigs. He gives them a lot of ownership and opportunity in the offense, which is great, which a lot of coaches don't do now. It's heavily guard oriented. So I think we're in position to see those guys make big jumps next year, and they've done a good job this year when they've been in their spot minutes, and that's usually how the progression goes.
Yeah, and not even just the big man, but just looking at like Dalen Terry and Benedict Mathurin. I mean, before Tommy got here, those guys, we thought they had some upside, but we didn't know the level. Like, we didn't know Ben Mathurin was going to be a top 10 pick in the NBA draft, and Terry being a top 20 pick. So yeah, I mean, Tommy's done a fantastic job. We know that. But AJ, before we go today, Arizona has 2 more games this weekend. Let's get into them real quick. Arizona, they're 19-point favorites tonight as we're recording this against Cal. Cal is the worst team in the Pac-12. They're 3-20. And then on Saturday, they play Stanford, who's the 3rd worst team in the Pac-12. So not great teams this weekend, but I wanted to ask you, how do you think this kind of makes Arizona prepare, and do you think it's kind of difficult for them to get up for these games, because we know they have struggled on some of these road Pac-12 games earlier in the season?
Yeah, I mean, earlier in the season, I would say that, but now I don't think so, man. I think, they've learned their lesson from some of these games where they've come out flat. And obviously the Utah game was the first one, and Oregon then after that. So I think we're going to be ready to play. I think, Cal's definitely struggling. They don't have Askew, and, and he was playing good basketball for them this season. So, that's a game that you're just going to have to come out right away and just punch them in the mouth and try to get them out of there early. And then, but Stanford, I think Stanford can give us a little test, man. Depending on how they play, they've kind of been up and down. They got smacked by Colorado in their last game. But, I think there's just something there about playing at Stanford. I know we'll be ready to play, but I think Stanford will put up a fight. So I think we're going to have to play good basketball in that game. I think our bigs will dominate in that game. And, but, Pac-12 road games have been, hit or miss for everybody this year. So, you just got to be ready to play. And I think we've learned our lesson of coming out flat in some of these games that, hey, any team can beat us when we're not on our best. So we got to be out there and ready to go right when the jump ball goes. So I think we'll be ready.
What's your prediction for these 2 games?
Sweep. I think we win both.
Another sweep?
Yeah.
Make Arizona, that'd make them go on an 8-game win streak.
Yeah, I think we're going to do it. I think we'll play good basketball.
And after this weekend, Arizona only has 5 games left of the season. Pretty hard to say that. But AJ, let everybody know who we have on the podcast up next. We have a great guest.
Yes, we have a returning guest, one of my guys, one of my favorite guys in Arizona basketball history and program, a guy that does a hell of a job on ESPN and covering college basketball. Goes by College Corey. Mr. Corey Williams is up next on Bear Down Ballers. All right, welcome to Bear Down Ballers. I got my man with me, a man who helped the Wildcats win 2 Pac-10 titles, as well as make an NCAA Sweet 16 appearance and a trip to the 1994 Final Four. The man currently known as College Corey in the college basketball world. C-Dub, welcome to Bear Down Ballers, my man.
What's going on, man? Thanks for having me.
Hey, man, anytime. I love to have you on, brother, man.
Yeah.
So, first of all, I want to give you your flowers just to start the show off. You've been killing it, on the broadcasting scene for many years now. You do a great job, brother. You're a big timer. I always want to make sure I give you your flowers on that, because I don't think people really understand how difficult that job is. And, I've done it sporadically here and there, but I think it's very difficult. Can you talk a little bit about what that job is like, and like how you prepare and what goes into, pregame and all that stuff? Because people just watch the game and be like, okay, that's cool. You're doing a good job, but there's a lot more that goes into it.
Yeah, there's a lot more that goes into it. Obviously, the key thing that jumps out is you have to be prepared. Yeah. You have to give, you have to understand and have a good history on both teams. Their fan bases are watching. So you got to be prepared from everything to current events to pronunciations of players on teams. And then, once the season starts rolling, you got to get that information, memorize it, and then dump it, because 48 hours later, you're doing 2 more teams. So the preparation is a lot. And then the other thing is you really got to have a unique style, because, how many different ways can you say that was a nice play? You've got to have 30 different ways to say the same thing, because you don't want to be stale. You want to be fresh. And then lastly, you really got to have a diverse approach, because everybody's watching the game at different levels. A guy like you and I could sit there and watch a game and we could exchange terminology and concepts that may go over some people's heads. The average viewer, you've got to connect with them. So you got to change your vocabulary, change your terminology, be able to explain what's going on to high-end individuals like yourself, the casual basketball fan, the diehard basketball fan, the young kid who's just learning about basketball. You really got to be able to speak multiple languages when you're doing work as an analyst. And one of the things that I think that I like the most about being an analyst is it's not my job to sell the game. I don't predict winners and losers. I don't try to get you to watch. But if you are watching, my job is to kind of break down what's happening. And that, if I try to stay in that lane. I think a lot of people want to make hot takes and predictions and all that kind of stuff and be famous for that. I'd rather be known for calling a good game.
Yeah, you do a hell of a job, man. And you're
Thank
interesting to listen to. I know what you're talking about every time, when you're talking about it through the game and through our kind of style of Arizona and Coach O and basketball. It's fun to watch, man. Who's some of your favorite people to do games with, man? I saw you on with Dave Pash, a few weeks ago. Is there a favorite partner that you have out there, somebody you'd want to call a game with that you haven't done yet?
Yeah, my favorite partner is who I'm tuning up tomorrow with, Roxy Bernstein. Roxy's my favorite. We got started in the biz. He started a couple years before me, but we kind of grew up in the early 2000s, 2010 through like 2015. They paired us up a lot together. And I work with Roxy. We got a natural chemistry. And I like working with Roxy because Roxy lets me talk.
Yeah.
He's the hardest working guy in sports. He does baseball, football, basketball, and some nights he just points to me and is like, yo, carry this. So I get more airtime with Roxy. He's my guy, though.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool, man. So let's talk about this college basketball season, man. You've seen a lot of it. You're knee deep in it, obviously, as always. And it just seems different this year to me for some reason. I don't see a dominant team out there as much as we've seen in other years. What's your overall take on the season so far in college basketball?
I think the way you feel, your instincts are correct. This is not a clear-cut top 15 type of year in college basketball. I think guys that have been around the sport like we have for a few decades, we are used to seeing college basketball play out a certain way. But this year, we definitely don't have a dominant team. There's nobody that jumps out on you and plays consistently dominant every week that we can say, these are the 4 1 seeds. They're definitely going to be in the Final Four. These are your Elite 8 teams. And I think we're starting to see the very beginnings of the impact of the transfer portal.
Yeah.
The upheaval, the spreading out of the talent, guys being able to flee to programs where there's minutes and opportunity. It's going to have a leveling effect in college basketball. I think any of the top 10 teams right now could win the national title. I think if you could make a case for any of them being able to string together 6 wins in a row come March, in a month from now. But yeah, I agree with you 100%. The talent is spread. It's like King of the Mountain. I don't know if you ever played King of the Mountain when you were a kid. You're up there till somebody pushed you off. That's what it's been this year. I think the people doing the rankings are literally blindfolded and throwing darts at a board because what they're saying doesn't make any sense to me from week to week.
Right.
At least to me, I'm not knocking them. I just don't agree with some of the conclusions they come with because I honestly think they don't know. I think there will be a ton of upsets in the tournament because there's just not that powerhouse collection of talent aside from a few key teams in college sports.
I don't see how Purdue stayed at number 1 after they lost, bro. If you lose as number 1, you got to drop. You got to drop down.
And that's the thing. They're taking a guy like your rationale and my rationale, and we're maxing it against people who are talking about quad 1 and quad 2 wins and strength of schedule and all of that stuff. They've got these formulas where you and I are just going off the eye test of you was the king of the hill and you got pushed off. How can you wake up the next morning and be back at the top of the hill? It's not how it works. But I try to stay positive. I try to stay in a good state of mind, because some of my instincts tell me it's for television, the rankings, the schedules, the matchups. It's made for TV. And we played in an era where you had to claw your way into the top 20. You had to win to stay there. You could be a top 20 team, and if your game wasn't on TV that week, it just wasn't on national TV, and you just kept playing. But now the matchups and the way the TV stations and the networks are all jockeying for position and advertising dollars, it just seems really, really sketchy sometimes when I see those rankings, because I'm like, nah, that can't be right. But they're doing the best they can to handicap the talent, and I get it. They're trying to figure out who's who, and I just don't agree with a lot of it.
Well, you got one of the best brains in the game, man. So, I trust what you got to say.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the transfer portal, man? Because, I can see both sides of it. I think it's a good thing in some instances. In others, I don't really like it. So, what is your take for being, kind of immersed in it, all these years and having it in your history as well,
Right. So you got to understand that I believe that you and I played in what I consider the golden era of college basketball from the 90s to the 2000s. And the reason I say that partly is because that's just when I played. So I'm sentimental. I feel like that was the best time. I feel like the coaches, the iconic coaches were at every school with Coach K and Lude. And, there were coaches in Boeheim and Syracuse. Like the 90s was just loaded with coaches that had been there for 20 years. They had programs where you knew what the product was going to be day in and day out. College basketball was super consistent in the 90s and the early 2000s. So the reason when the transfer portal first jumped off, I hated it because I felt like it was a change from what I had to go through. Yeah. And I didn't like the fact that kids could bail and move around and everything. And then I took a deeper look and I said, well, wait a minute. If the kids are the driving force in college basketball, and a college coach, as you and I both know, can leave at the end of the season and go on to greener pastures and get a better deal at the drop of a dime. He can leave kids that he recruited and go to a better job opportunity. Why shouldn't young men have that same freedom?
Right.
And then I thought on it from a principal standpoint. I said, well, you really can't be upset about the transfer portal because, I got to Arizona and the coach that recruited me left after my freshman year. I really didn't have anybody fighting for me. Right. My dad, luckily enough, told me I had to stick it out and transferring wasn't an option. But in those situations, you never know what these kids are being told when they're being recruited. Yeah. Some of these kids are transferring just because they're looking for the easiest path. Some of these kids are transferring because things aren't what they were told, right, and then they got no way out. So I'm not so set against the transfer portal as I first was. I understand it. Now that I've said that, I'll go back to my original position. The transfer portal is going to be horrible for college basketball because now you're going to combine the transfer portal with NIL. Yeah. And it literally will be full-blown free agency every offseason. That's all it's going to be. It's going to be, I was the seventh man at school A. Somebody's going to give me a bag of money to come be a starter at school B. I'm taking my talents and I'm going wherever I need to go. And if I have a crappy year there, I may step down and play at another school. I mean, they're going to have to, unfortunately, if you want a product that you can put on TV and still generate the revenue and have the fans be excited and have that machine working, you got to have consistency. And the transfer portal and NIL is the exact antithesis of consistency. Yeah. It literally is, where do I want to go? When do I want to go? Where's the best deal? So I'm thinking, how do you go market Kentucky in a year that they may not make the tournament? How do you market North Carolina if they have a down year? How do you market blue blood programs that used to be consistent, that used to rate well on TV, but now it's whoever's the highest bidder is going to have the talent? I mean, I'm hoping it's not as worse as I'm hoping it doesn't get as bad as I think, but it just, I don't see it being the next couple of years are going to be very, very interesting, very, very stressful for a lot of the Power 5 conferences.
Well, you can see that. I mean, already with Kentucky this year, for sure. You know, what I mean, they got a top class coming in next year, but this year has been an absolute struggle for them. North
Mhm.
Carolina, they got the whole team back, which is. I wanted to ask you about North Carolina a little bit, just because I don't understand what's going on there. Get your thoughts on them after being in the national championship game last year, and then same team back and whatever. They're just not performing at the level that we thought that they would, which kind of goes into just it being wide open, like we talked about. I think the NIL deal, obviously I wish that it would have been around when we were playing because
Woo,
I think
man.
we could have definitely capitalized on that, a
My
little
whole
bit.
house, my whole house would be different right now.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
you'd be living here.
Exactly. So I'm happy that guys are being able to make money and
Sure.
get compensated because they should be,
Right.
But I agree with you that, something's got to happen. Either you cap the number of times the guys can move or, whatever it is, it's something has to be a little bit more structure with it because it's going to hurt us in the end.
Hmm. And yeah, having guys change and it's bad because in the NBA they got trade tampering and you're
Yeah.
not supposed to be talking to this. Well, college basketball, you got 200 institutions, all with kids who aren't. I mean, let's be honest. At a program, if you any year you were at Arizona, what percentage of the roster was happy?
Yeah. Not very much. Yeah.
Your
Nobody.
starters plus the
Yeah.
first dude coming off the bench.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you won national titles, and yet you still know 60% of that team was happy. The rest was
Yeah.
like, I need to be hooping more.
Yeah.
You
For
know?
real. Yeah.
So plucking kids that are unhappy, especially young kids who don't necessarily have the maturity or understand everything that's going on, it's going to be a lot of this cross-contamination, coaches pulling recruiting and all this underhanded stuff. It's about to take place because on any given program, it's not possible for all 14 players to be happy. It's just
Right.
not. And I
Yeah.
think the transfer portal and NIL provides this option that, the grass is greener over here, and it's just going to be chaos. Coaches will have to literally rebuild their rosters each year, which is
Yeah.
going to be, you're seeing it already, like North Carolina.
Yeah.
I don't know what their issue is. They returned a lot of talent. You thought they'd be better, but sometimes it's not that simple.
Yeah, and we've benefited this year from two guys that transferred in with Courtney Ramey and Seth Henderson Jr. I think they're doing a great job. They were at their schools for 4 years, before then, and transferred in. They've been doing a great job. But are you surprised at the season that Arizona has had so far this season? Were you expecting them to do this well this year? Or what were your thoughts going into the season? Where are they now?
I was surprised how they dominated in Maui. That was the first thing that opened my eyes because that was some real competition that they had to play. I'm not surprised they beat, SC and UCLA at home.
Yeah.
I'm going to be very curious to see how they play there because that's the closest environment this Arizona team will have to an Elite Eight game.
Yeah.
Playing at Pauley, playing at SC. That's the feel of that second weekend in terms of the competition and the atmosphere. I'm extremely surprised at their losses.
Yeah.
Losses are head scratchers because I don't think any of those teams will end up in the tournament. But it's like, wow, on these nights, you can look like a solid national championship contender. But at the same time, you've got some weaknesses that were exploited against a lot lesser competition. So I think I'm very excited about this year's team. I think they've done great. I think the record speaks for itself. I mean, last year they were 33-4.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong right now, they only have 3 losses as a team
Correct.
right now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they're and I hate to change subject slightly, but I'm a Cowboys fan for football. So I pay attention to Dallas's worst games because I know that's what they could be.
Right.
So going into the playoffs, I'm like, they could play like they played against the Texans. And sure enough, they did, and they lost. So with this Arizona team, I'm trying not to be a Cowboy fan. Like, I hope they don't play a Utah game first round of the tournament. I hope they don't play a Washington State game first round because they've shown you that they can be beat, but everybody's shown you that this year.
Yeah.
But I think this team is definitely more times than not going to be very dominant. I think they got the best inside players in the country with Tabelis and Ballo. Man, they're well balanced. They're well coached. The kids like each other, which is huge. It's you know how that is when the guys like each other.
Take peace, man, for real.
I played on teams in Arizona in all 4 years. I played on teams where everybody hated each other and we did good. And I played on teams where everybody liked each other and we did good. It was just the weirdest thing. So, but when you like each other, it tends to give you a little bit of something extra.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where it shows up is when you get into those tough times Even you don't like each other, and you may not have them all through the year because you're playing well enough to win. You have enough talent to win. But when it really comes down to it in the tournament or whatever it is, you get to that time where you either got to go like this or break apart. That's where that shows. You know what I mean? And that's where that the like of each other really pushes you through the victories and as far as you can go as a team. You know what I mean? And I think the one thing I'll say about Arizona this year is that when they have lost, they've come back better immediately afterwards and fixed the things that happened to them. They've changed their game plan a little bit. They've started throwing some little twists and turns in, which has helped. And I've thought that they've lost the games because of not competing at the highest level. That's when I think they've lost most of them, is just not putting out the effort that we need them to put out every single game to play at that high level. And I think that they've responded well from that now, and they played a lot better recently too. You know what I mean? So but you're right that it's scary. It is scary. You know what I mean? When you have those kind of blips in a row, but everyone's had those this year, which you mentioned. It's just part of college basketball this year for whatever reason. But I think we got a shot to make it. What do you see the rest of their season looking like, and how far do you think that they can make it?
I think this team can split, if not sweep, in LA. I think they can win it in Vegas just because that's McHale North. I mean, you know, the whole city's going to turn up for that one.
Yes, sir.
That's a home game. There's 3 home games for us, you know, in Vegas. I hope they can stay on a 1 line, and I think they're a team that can definitely win their first 3.
Yeah.
And I'm really going to say they got a 75% chance to win their 4th game in the tournament and get to the Final Four. Once they get to the Final Four, I think it's a you pick them, depending on who else shows up there. I mean, you guys went on that unbelievable run, and you knew something in that locker room that the rest of the country had no idea about.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't, I mean, we had the brand was there, you know, it was Arizona, but you certainly didn't have the regular season that a national champion would have had. And, you know, going back to your earlier point, when guys like each other, how do you develop that with the transfer portal, with guys coming and going all the time? How do you even build that bond? Well, the formula at Arizona with Tommy Lloyd and the international players, international guys aren't transferring and hopping schools left to right. True. So that's a headache that he doesn't have to worry about. And I think that's one of the strengths of this Arizona team is you've got international players who come from, and I'll just be honest, they come from a better culture basketball-wise than we currently have in the United States. In Europe, you played, I played, it's, man, move the rock to the best shot, whoever's open shoots the ball. Everybody's connected. We're all doing things together. Our club needs to beat their club. Yeah. That's how these kids are born into basketball. You play for your local city against other cities, then you play for your national team against other countries. It is all, there is no individual fame in the European feeder system. Yeah. Play club ball, your club has success, you get noticed, and then you become an amateur or a pro, or you play for your national team and you come to college, or you play in your professional league. So their mentality has always been to be a part of a winning situation. Yeah. And the desire to transfer and become a star. I mean, they're young people. Those young people are no different than our American hoopers, but their mentality and the culture they come from is incredibly different. And most American fans don't have any idea because they've never been to Europe and seen how the kids start in Spain and Greece and France and Eastern Europe and Germany. They don't know how basketball's taught. They just see the finished product when these guys come over. And I mean, let's be real, AJ, if you give me the top European players in the NBA, I'm going to beat everybody.
Yes, I mean, it's going to be a game. It's going to be.
It's not really, because I'm going to get Jokic. I'm going to get it.
Yeah, you got it.
I'm going to get
Jokic,
Greek and Luka. And you and me, us 6, we got it. So it don't matter who else you have, you know. So when you look at the top players in the league, the European invasion is real. International basketball is officially global, you know. Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, you go ahead. It's a love-hate thing because I get to I'll go to the game and man, if there's 3 or 4 really difficult African names that I have to learn every game. Yeah, and I love to see the brothers out there, but I'm like, man, come on with the name, and I gotta learn it, you know. And every team has the French guys and the Yugoslavian guys and the guys from Estonia and the Croatia and Africa, and it's just beautiful, man. The world is coming to America. Basketball's becoming better. And yeah, years ago we had to start sending our pros because the day was over. We couldn't send the college kids anymore. So I love it. I think it's great for the game. I think it definitely adds. I love to do stories and pieces on the international players. And you and I both know what it's like to go over there to try to have a career in Europe and be away from your family. Imagine being 5, 6, 7, 8 years younger, coming here and having to go to school and still pursue basketball. So I tip my hat to all those international kids.
Yeah, I mean, we're benefiting from it, absolutely. And one of the guys that's, doing a hell of a job this year, it should, in my opinion, be mentioned more in the National Player of the Year conversation is Big Zoop, Azuolas Tubelis. Want to get your thoughts on him, his transformation kind of from last year to this year in his game. And then do you think that he should be getting more pub, on the national scene for, National Player of the Year at this point?
Yeah, Zoo was a guy who was the go-to guy at Miller's last year. And then all of a sudden he takes a backseat to Matherin and Koloko and those guys. And then now it's his turn to shine. When you think about that mental toughness, 2 different coaches over the last 3 seasons, 3 completely different roles every season. And then Zoo is going to be a victim of his own personality or character, I should say. He's a real solid kid. He's really a great kid. He's very coachable. His guys love seeing. He hardly shows much emotion when he's out there playing. I liken him to like Ivan Drago in the Rocky movie. He just, if he dies, he dies. That's how he come out, like whatever. So and I think that works against him with the national hype machine. Why? He's not banging out 5 million tweets. He's not on Instagram. He's not, pumping up his fist and diving into the crowd. And he's not an over-the-top personality. And the other thing that works against him is he makes it look so easy.
Yeah.
He dropped 40-something on, was it Oregon?
On Oregon, yeah.
AJ, I bet you $100 he didn't dribble the ball 8 times.
Yeah.
He did.
Absolutely.
I would go back and watch tape. He hardly dribbled the ball. So you're looking at a player who's just getting it, flipping it in, pump fake, and one, roll, layup, out on the break, dunk. Like he's getting it so matter of fact, and then he's not into the big celebrations. It's like as a producer or the guys in the truck, they're like, man, let's put together a Tubelis package, and when we come out of break, we're gonna hype him up. And it's just flip, dunk, shot, and it looks good. But he doesn't fit the mold of the kid out there giving you the 6 million Ja Morant moves and the dunk, which is what people usually bite on in terms of hype. He's very efficient, and unfortunately, his efficiency kind of makes him less exciting. But you're right, there's nobody in the country putting in better work than him right now.
No, he's been doing it, man. He's been doing it all season, from the first game of the season till now, man. He hasn't had really any off games.
He's being penalized because he's not flashy, which is unfair.
Yeah. So for Arizona to make a deep run this year, what do you think they haven't seen from them that they need? And is there a certain player or players that you think need to do something specific for them to be able to make it to that Final Four run and get to where they want to go this year?
2 things have to happen for Arizona to get to the Final Four. And I'm going to give up the cheat code right now. I don't care how people feel about it. If Ballo and Tubelis stay on the floor and out of foul trouble, and Tommy can play him at the same time, there's nobody in the country that can see that. Nobody can see that. That is that high-low, that penetration dish. Tubelis is an outstanding passer. He can shoot from the high post. Ballo came out of nowhere just beasting fools in the paint. Every minute that those 2 stay on the court together is a minute that you don't really have no chance inside against Arizona. You're not getting no layups. You're not posting nobody up. You're not getting – so we shut down the paint every minute those 2 are out there together. Arizona's Achilles heel in my position is their ball handling and their point. They don't have a true point guard. Now, if Kylan Bosman has been playing sensational as a 17-year-old.
17 years old, baby.
I feel so horrible. Like, look here, 17-year-old kid who should still be in high school, you're the key. Because if you can just bring up the rock against pressure and get us into our stuff, we're good.
Yeah.
But the turnovers against traps and little jump gimmick presses, We need him to play a year or two older than he is. If we can get away with that and get some really, if we get 20 minutes of solid point guard play out of him, it's over. Because the ball handling was the major issue. I think for me, you've got to have a point guard. When it's a 6-point game with 3 minutes to go, you played with lottery picks out front who just made it happen, didn't turn it over. You got a shot every time, or you got to the free throw line, or you ran what coach was asking you to run.
Yep.
You have to have that when you start to fight when you start to get towards the elite competition in the middle of the tournament. Your guard play, you will live and die by your guard play. I played with 2 lottery picks. I don't ever remember us working on a press break. We just inbound the ball.
You inbound it to Stod and get out the way.
Get out the way. Give it to James. Yeah. So, that's the only weakness I see on this Arizona team. I think they can be pressured. But if Boswell can handle that pressure and keep us in our offense, whether it's Ramey, Henderson, Pella Larson on the wing, Kirk Risa, get him out of the ball handling role a little bit and let him be a threat to space the court. He doesn't have to start with the ball in his hand. As long as it eventually ends up with him shooting a 3, we're good. But I think this Arizona team is deep. They play hard. They're big. They're physical. They're talented. I mean, when you start getting threes from Ramey and Henderson, then you're really getting ran out the gym. Because that's just gravy. So I like their chances. I think there are some guys on this year's team that feel like they got some unfinished business from last year. They don't like how things ended, which is always great. You had that when you came to Arizona. We already was pissed off, and you found out why we were mad, and then we went through some things that you witnessed, and you're like, that ain't gonna happen to me. And you know what I'm saying? And so you brought the freshman in, like, look, this is what happened before. I'm not going out like that. So that is always good when you got guys left over that have something to prove and a little bit of a chip on their shoulder.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So that's great analogy, great analysis, man. So let's talk. I see behind you, same thing I got behind me. How you feel when you see them out there rocking our uniforms, man? Because I love them, man.
It's funny because they're like, oh, we're bringing back the 97. That's a whole timeout. That was 95, 96. Don't do that. That was our senior year when we rocked the Navy Blues. I really love the Reds. And I know, I think Salim and them were the last ones to play in the Reds. They didn't play in the Reds in a while. But the solid Reds, we brought those out my sophomore year. But I love to see that's crazy because now my college is considered throwback era. So they call them
we're both throwbacks. We both throwbacks now.
I mean, I like it because, to be honest with you, man, I was really down in the dumps for a while, man. The early to mid 2000s. I felt like players were coming to the program and didn't understand the history. They were just using the Arizona logo to get to the league, and they wasn't bringing home no championships. They wasn't bringing home no conference titles. They wasn't going to the Final Four. It was like, what can I get? They had heard of Arizona and they knew it was a sexy school to go to, but they were just passing through. Sean Miller won a lot of games after Lute Olson, but there were some years in there where it was Russ Pennell and Kevin O'Neill, and guys were passing through. And they're still brothers of ours because they played here. Everybody that ever suited up is a brother. But I felt like the connection to other teams and understanding eras. And when they came out and started the season in the throwbacks to like the Kerr and Elliott days. And the fans love that. Because and that's the crazy thing about Arizona, you're playing in front of people who have a 30-year memory of basketball. I wish people, we need more students at the game. I said, yeah, but students can't afford those tickets. So you're playing in front of people who remember Steve Kerr and Damon Stoudemire and Mike Bibby and Jason Terry and AJ Bramlett and Eugene Ederson and Luke and Richard. You're playing in front of people who have a good basketball IQ. And anytime you can honor and bring back or relive former memories and former eras of players, the fans are going to love it. It was good for the program. They even brought back the old logo with the cactus.
Yes,
you know
sir.
What I mean? Like,
I love that
they're
one.
going retro with it because I think they understand that it's the history of the program that makes it great. If things went bad for Arizona and the team lost let's say the team went 5-25 next year, the people in Tucson wouldn't stand for it. They would demand that the coach go and the AD go, and we'll start from scratch, because the fan base is what makes your basketball program.
Yes.
If your fan base won't tolerate mediocrity, you will have a good basketball program. But if your fan base doesn't even come to the games and they don't really care, then you're going to struggle, because there's not that community pressure to be successful.
Yeah.
And, we say, big shoes to fill with Coach Olson and the legacy. But yeah, Coach O and what he was able to create with all the coaches that he worked with here at Arizona, he created a city of 1 million people who will not settle for anything less than excellent basketball.
Absolutely, man.
So you can't not succeed and stay here.
Yeah.
Go somewhere else and coach. You can go somewhere else and play, but here you cannot just show up and not do your job, because these people have memories of 17 other people that played your position, and they're psychologically like, is he as good as so-and-so?
Right.
And they have memories, they have these stories, they've passed these tickets down in their family. Like, their legacy is what makes the program great. And I try to tell that to people everywhere I go. How do you guys do it at Arizona? What's the key to a winning program? Man, you got to get the people in the community to fall in love with the program.
Yeah.
And everything else will take care of itself. Because those people, you see fans on the message boards after a loss.
Yep.
It's crazy.
Lose it, brother. Lose it. Lose it.
Yeah, I'm kind of nervous. I got the game Saturday night at Stanford.
Yeah.
I got to make sure I don't say nothing crazy. These people know where I live. And I played here.
That's right.
It's crazy.
Yeah, man. Very well put. Very well put. So, okay, I got 2 more for you, then I'll let you get out of here, man. But you talked about the community. I just want to make sure we shine light on what you've been doing, all these years in the Tucson community with the Tucson Summer Pro League. Can you talk about what that's going to be like, coming up for this year? If you want to give it love to any sponsors and stuff like that, just talk about, because that's just done so much for the youth and sports culture in general in Tucson. You've done a hell of a job with that over the years. So talk a little bit about that, man.
It's been such an arc from what you remember when we first started it. It was so star-studded because we had our guys that were at the U of A, and we had a ton of Coach O's guys playing in the NBA. We all hung out in Tucson during the summer. So, guys were coming back. And that was the reason that I even created the Summer League, is to give us pros some good competition and some good runs during the summer. And man, those first 2 or 3 seasons were unbelievable, because we had this mix of college players that the fans loved, plus their greatest NBA pro Wildcats were coming in every once in a while and playing. It was just it was a match made in heaven. And then the men's league was good, because there were some solid men's ball players in Tucson to help make the league solid, and they enjoyed getting to come out on the court with guys from the U of A and guys from the NBA. So it was just really a great community event. And then, basketball began to change. We knew we were never going to be the Drew League or, an NBA Summer League, but the NBA Summer League exploded.
Yeah.
Leagues like the Drew League are now just phenomenal. And what happens is the Arizona recruit, and this is going to sound kind of crazy, they're just too good to play in the Tucson Summer Pro League. Right. They're going to go back to their hometown and play in their local pro-am that has 5,000 people at the games and it's all over social media. So we don't necessarily get our own guys that much anymore. And then the other thing is the players are literally like more valuable than we were in our day. They don't want to risk anything in the summer playing in a game or a pro-am with locals. Right. So what we did was we took a break from the men's league, and man, we started the kids league from 11 to 13. Oh, that's been a dream. The kids, it's awesome. We treat them just like rock stars. We give them all the perks that the men used to get, the Nike uniforms, the shot clock, the PA announcer, the music. We have so much fun with those kids, and they enjoy it. And last year we did 11 to 13. This year we're going to break it out because the age difference is a little too much now. We're going to go 10 and 11 division, a 12 and 13 division. And I'm really, really, really hoping to put together a girls division so that the ladies have a girls division of middle school age so they can play with themselves. As far as support, man, so many people I can't name. Betsy Bruce, Casino del Sol, all my local sponsors that have been with me for years, Ace Hardware, the Moore Law Firm, people who are diehard U of A fans, and they'll donate and sponsor with a few dollars to help the kids play. I mean, who doesn't love the kids? I mean, it's easier to raise money when you're talking about 11 and 13 and versus, guys that are adults. So for us, we're going to stick with the kids. I want to put some stuff together for the adults, maybe some 3-on-3s and some fun basketball things, because everywhere I go, when you're going to bring the men's league back, when you're going to bring the men's league back. And I'm like, y'all not as cute as the kids. It's too hard to raise money for y'all. And the kids are easy. You know what I'm saying? Like, y'all got LA Fitness. That's the best we can do right now. So we're talking about bringing the men's league back. But yeah, guys just ain't hooping in the summer like we used to. You know, they're just not. And I understand times change, and we've been fortunate. I got a good group of sponsors that as we started to change direction, they said, hey, Corey, we're with you. Whatever you want to do, count us in. And so we've been having people who just really love the fact that we're in the community. We're trying to give back. I mean, Arizona, Coach O, it all changed my life. I mean, I'm sitting here now in Tucson for that simple reason, because I made that decision some 20-something years ago. So for me to try to do something for the kids in Tucson and do something for the parents in the community, when this system, this program, this city gave me a life that I couldn't imagine. I've traveled, I've made money, I'm on television, all because of me being a part of this. It's easy for me to turn around and say, I'm going to dedicate 8 or 9 weekends each summer to making sure these young people have something for themselves, because Tucson's given me a lot.
Yeah, well, keep doing what you're doing, man. It's a great thing. Last thing for you, LeBron passing Kareem last night. Does it make him the GOAT over MJ?
I mean, everybody's got their criteria, and people usually dive into the argument before they agree on what's the criteria.
Yeah.
So you're like, who's the greatest of all time? And you say, who's the greatest of all time? Well, LeBron's longevity is superior to Jordan's. I cannot deny that. For him to be playing at 38, I retired at 34, and I still could have been hooping, but I had already lost the step, and I was getting frustrated. I couldn't play D the way I wanted to. So I told myself, I'm not going to be out here embarrassing myself. I'm done at 34. LeBron's taking good care of himself. He's got the longevity. He's got the all-time scoring record over Kareem. Does that make him the greatest player ever? I can't figure out how people get there exactly when he went 4 for 9 in the finals. He lost more than he won. My guy went 6-0.
I know what your answer was going to be. That's why
he had a three-peat. He had a three-peat. No, in fact, I'm waiting on. He never got 1 3-peat. My guy had 2.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna end it like this. Okay, we could talk about numbers. We could talk about this and that, but by every metric, awards, and everything, Jordan is the GOAT. Defense, All-Star MVPs, NBA champ, Finals MVPs. I mean, he's this. If you added up, there's a graphic that you need to find online where they actually put the statues next to each other. All the little awards that you see. One column has a whole bunch, and one has some, but not as many. But here's all I'm gonna say to you. And I tell people, they say, man, C-Dub, who's your team now? Who's your team now? And I was like, man, I'm like a widow, AJ. I'm an old lady widow. My husband died back in 1998. Jordan hung it up. That's the last marriage I had. I ain't been married since. I'm a widow. And my man was good to me. He got 6 rings. He never lost. He never lost. Don't come in here talking about my deceased husband. I don't want to hear that. Mr. GOAT. And I told these young dudes in the barbershop literally last year, they were talking back and forth, LeBron versus LJ. I said, look here, man. Y'all can talk till the cows come home. I'm going to ask you one question. If your girl went out to the club and 9 dudes hit on her and she gave out her number 6 times and came home and said, well, I only gave it out to 6 of the 10, you'll be mad. But if she came home and said 6 dudes hit on me and I didn't give out my number once, who got the best girlfriend? Huh? Who got the best girlfriend? That's MJ all I got. All day. MJ you all up day, here celebrating 4 out of 9. Mike never strayed. If he got there, he did it. So it's an unfair conversation, because here's the other thing. He had the ceremony, right?
Yeah.
Greatness is not something that you can go into a computer and add up and calculate or get a bunch of things. Greatness, that's not what greatness is. Greatness, and I'm being serious right now, greatness is something that's given to you by the people.
Right.
They said Muhammad Ali was great.
Yeah.
They introduced him that way. Muhammad Ali is one of the few words you can say in any country, and you don't have to speak the language at all. But if you get off the plane and say Muhammad Ali, everybody knows what you mean.
Yeah.
Michael Jordan is a name you can say in any language. Now, I would say LeBron is probably very close. Tiger Woods, Mike Tyson, possibly. There are some names you could say around the world, and some famous soccer players too, that you could probably get a reaction from. But what I'm gonna say is this. You and I can go into any Foot Locker right now and buy a pair of LeBron James shoes. Right now. We gotta go find somebody, pay resale, get a sneaker app, wait on the drop, know somebody at Foot Locker. You can't get J's in 2023 without having a plug, and the man ain't touched the court in almost 20 years. You can't get his shoes. That's because he's great. He's beyond a ball player. He's a brand now. And then I'm gonna end my sermon on this because I know church be dismissed.
Preach.
LeBron James passes Kareem last night. His sons are there to witness the whole deal, right? AJ, find the picture. They got on Jordans. Bron's kids is courtside wearing J's the night he passed Kareem. I'm done. We ain't gotta talk about that.
Drop the mic, bro.
How you even get in the car to ride home with dad? Like, I couldn't rock the LeBrons tonight. Like, hey, Pops, we needed to look our best, and the best is MJ. That's all I got to say.
That's all we need, man.
Your old Steeds is wearing Jordans on your night. It's your kids. One of them got your name. And he wearing James. I don't want to hear nothing about no GOAT talk, man. That did it for me. I was like, man, there's gonna be some tense. It's a tense ride home in the James family.
Hey, man. C-Dub, bro. Every time, man. I appreciate you.
Yes, sir.
Keep doing your thing. Have some good games this weekend, brother. And hopefully we can ride this Arizona thing all the way to the Final Four this year, my man. Love to have you back on again soon, brother.
Always a pleasure, man. Thanks for having me.
All right, Dub. Great job, man. Appreciate it.